Ethan Cole didn't believe in luck. He believed in power, control, and the kind of wealth that made politicians return his calls within minutes. Tonight, surrounded by his executive team at the most expensive rooftop restaurant in San Francisco, he felt invincible. The city sparkled below like a kingdom he'd already conquered. His company, Cole Logistics International, moved 30% of all consumer goods across the Pacific. He was untouchable. Or so he thought. Until a waitress in a coffee-stained uniform made him question everything. She appeared at his elbow so quietly he barely noticed. Her name tag read Maya in faded letters. Her dark hair was pulled back tight, and her eyes stayed fixed on the floor as she refilled water glasses around the table. Ethan was mid-sentence, explaining to his CFO why their Tokyo expansion was struggling, when an idea struck him. A terrible, arrogant idea that would haunt him for months to come. "Excuse me," Ethan said loudly, stopping mid-conversation. The table fell silent. "Maya, is it?" The waitress froze, water pitcher trembling slightly in her grip. She nodded without looking up. Ethan grinned at his colleagues. "We're having a bit of a business problem here. Our overseas expansion is hemorrhaging money. Since you work in customer service, maybe you have some advice." His executives chuckled. It was meant as a joke. A moment of cruel entertainment before dessert arrived. Maya's fingers tightened around the pitcher handle. For 3 long seconds she said nothing. Then, without lifting her eyes, she spoke. "You're losing money because you're shipping during peak congestion hours in Tokyo Bay, your warehouse distribution doesn't account for the train schedule gaps on weekends, and your staffing model assumes Western labor patterns in a country where temporary contract work dominates." The laughter died instantly. Ethan's smile vanished. Maya finally looked up, meeting his eyes with an expression that wasn't fear. It was pity. The table sat in stunned silence. Ethan's CFO Richard leaned forward. "How could you possibly know?" Maya cut him off. "Your quarterly report is public. The timing of your losses corresponds exactly with seasonal shipping route changes. It's not complicated. You just weren't looking at the right data." She set the water pitcher down carefully. "Will there be anything else, sir?" Ethan couldn't speak. This woman, this waitress in a uniform that had seen better days, had just diagnosed a $50 million problem in 15 seconds. A problem his entire executive team had spent 3 months failing to solve. "Wait," Ethan said as Maya turned to leave. His voice came out sharper than he intended. "What do you mean, train schedule gaps?" Maya hesitated. Something flickered across her face. Calculation. Fear. Then resignation. Tokyo's rail cargo system reduces weekend freight capacity by 40% to prioritize passenger service. Your warehouses are positioned for truck delivery, but Tokyo traffic makes trucks inefficient. You need rail access. You don't have it. So your goods sit in port storage, racking up fees while your distribution schedule falls apart. She said it like she was reading from a textbook. Oh, Ethan realized. Like she'd written the textbook. His vice president of operations, Jennifer, pulled out her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. Her face went pale. "She's right. Oh my God, she's completely right. How did we miss this?" Maya's jaw tightened. "You missed it because whoever designed your expansion model didn't understand Japanese infrastructure. They used American logistics assumptions in an Asian market. It's a common mistake." Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. She wanted to run. Ethan could see it in the way she glanced toward the kitchen door. "Sit down," Ethan said. It wasn't a request. Maya shook her head. "I need to get back to work." But Ethan was already pulling out his wallet. He placed $500 bills on the table. 5 minutes of your time. That's $1,000 a minute. Sit." The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Maya looked at the money, then at Ethan, then at the kitchen door where her manager was watching with growing suspicion. Slowly, she pulled out a chair and sat on its edge, ready to bolt. Ethan leaned forward. "Who are you?" It was the only question that mattered. Maya folded her hands in her lap. "I'm a waitress. I serve food. That's all." But her eyes told a different story. They were the eyes of someone who'd seen boardrooms and balance sheets, someone who understood corporate warfare. "Nobody just knows this," Ethan pressed. "You talk like a consultant. Like an executive. What's your real background?" Maya's expression hardened. "I read. I observe. Can I go now?" She reached for the money, but Ethan's hand shot out, stopping her. "I'll pay you $50,000 for a full audit of my expansion strategy," Ethan said. The number hung in the air like a grenade. His executives stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Maya's face went white. "I can't." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why not?" Ethan demanded. Maya stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "Because I can't be connected to any corporation publicly. I can't have my name on anything. I can't." She stopped herself, breathing hard. "I just can't. I'm sorry." She turned and walked away so fast it was almost a run. Ethan watched her disappear through the kitchen doors. His CFO cleared his throat. "Boss, what just happened?" Ethan didn't answer. He was already texting his head of security. 3 words: find out everything. Because women who understood international logistics at that level didn't just serve water at restaurants. They had pasts. And Ethan Cole always uncovered the truth. The report arrived at 2 in the morning. Ethan sat in his penthouse office, city lights reflecting off the glass walls, and read it 3 times. Maya Lewis. Age unknown. Current address: a studio apartment in the Tenderloin district. Employment history: 5 years at various low-wage service jobs. Before that, nothing. No college records. No previous employment. No social media presence before 5 years ago. No family. No friends. No digital footprint whatsoever. Maya Lewis didn't exist before 2020. She was a ghost. A brilliant, terrified ghost who knew things she shouldn't know. Ethan opened his laptop and accessed his company's financial reports. Maya's warning about the Tokyo expansion echoed in his mind. He started cross-referencing data, following the threads she'd mentioned. 2 hours later he found something that made his blood run cold. There was a data breach. Small. Almost invisible. Someone had accessed their supply chain algorithms 3 weeks ago. The same algorithms that controlled their entire Pacific operation. The breach was expertly hidden, but Maya's comment about common mistakes suddenly felt less like advice and more like a warning. She hadn't guessed about his company's problems. She'd known. Which meant she'd seen inside his systems. He picked up his phone and called his head of security. "I need a meeting with Maya Lewis. Tomorrow. Private. I don't care how you arrange it." Then he did something he rarely did. He waited. Because for the first time in years Ethan Cole wasn't in control. And the woman who held all the answers was serving breakfast at a diner downtown, pretending to be nobody. The next morning, Maya arrived at work to find her manager waiting with an envelope. Inside was a note written in precise handwriting. "The coffee shop on Market and 3rd. Noon. Come alone, or I'll make sure every restaurant in the city knows you're giving away corporate secrets. EC." Her hands shook as she read it. She'd been so careful. 5 years of staying invisible, and one stupid moment of pride had blown everything apart. But she couldn't ignore this. Ethan Cole wasn't a man who made empty threats. At 11:45 she walked into the coffee shop. Ethan sat in the back corner, laptop closed, expression unreadable. He gestured to the seat across from him. Maya sat, spine straight, ready for whatever came next. "I had you investigated," Ethan said without preamble. "You don't exist before 5 years ago. Which means Maya Lewis isn't your real name." He paused, studying her reaction. "So I'll ask you again. Who are you?" Maya's throat felt tight. She'd prepared for this conversation 1,000 times. But sitting across from a billionaire who could destroy her with a single phone call made all her rehearsed answers evaporate. "If I tell you," Maya said quietly, "you'll use it against me." Ethan leaned back. "Maybe. Or maybe I'll help you. But I can't do anything until I know what I'm dealing with." He pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. It was the data breach report. "Someone accessed my systems 3 weeks ago. Someone who understands logistics algorithms at a level that only a handful of people in the world possess. That same someone showed up at my dinner and diagnosed problems she shouldn't have been able to see." He set the phone down. "So either you're a corporate spy or you're something else entirely. Which is it?" Maya closed her eyes. 5 years of running. 5 years of hiding. And it all came down to this moment. When she opened her eyes again, something had shifted. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something harder. Bigger. "My real name is Dr. Amara Voss," she said, and watched Ethan's face change. He knew that name. Everyone in logistics knew that name. I designed the quantum flow algorithm 7 years ago. The one that revolutionized supply chain prediction. The one your company uses every single day. Her voice was steady now, cold. The one that was stolen from me. Ethan's expression went from shock to disbelief. Amara Voss disappeared. The company that employed her said she had a breakdown. That she tried to sabotage. Maya laughed, and it was a bitter sound. Of course, that's what they said. I designed an algorithm worth billions, and when I realized my employer was planning to patent it under their name and cut me out completely, I tried to expose them. So they destroyed me instead. She leaned forward. They erased my credentials, blacklisted me from every tech company, froze my assets, and made sure no one would ever hire Dr. Amara Voss again. So I became Maya Lewis. A ghost who serves coffee and keeps her mouth shut. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small. Ethan processed what he'd just heard, connecting pieces that didn't want to fit together. If you designed quantum flow, then you know. Maya cut him off. I know everything about it. Including the fact that it's failing. She said it so calmly that it took a moment for the words to register. Ethan felt his stomach drop. What are you talking about? Quantum flow runs perfectly. It's been audited. Maya shook her head. It runs perfectly now. But I built a failsafe into the original code. A kill switch that activates if the algorithm detects prolonged unethical usage patterns. And your company's expansion model is triggering it. Ethan's world tilted. You're saying the algorithm will shut down? Maya's eyes were hard. I'm saying it will collapse. In approximately 3 weeks, quantum flow will begin introducing microerrors into every calculation. Shipments will be delayed. Routes will be miscalculated. Inventory predictions will fail. And because the error pattern will look random, no one will understand what's happening until it's too late. He paused, letting that sink in. But here's the truly interesting part. The company that stole my work? They know about the kill switch. They've been waiting for it to activate so they can offer their fixed version to every company using quantum flow. They're going to profit from chaos they deliberately created. Ethan sat back, mind racing. If Maya was telling the truth, his entire company was sitting on a time bomb. But more than that, the entire global logistics industry was at risk. Why are you telling me this? He asked. Maya's smile was sad. Because you asked me for advice. And because 3 weeks from now, when supply chains start failing, people will suffer. Workers will lose jobs. Families will go hungry. I didn't design quantum flow to hurt people. I designed it to help them. She stood up. But I can't fix it. The moment I surface as Amara Voss, I'll be arrested on the fabricated charges they planted. So you're on your own. Wait, Ethan said, standing so fast his chair scraped the floor. What if I could protect you? What if I could give you resources, legal protection, everything you need to prove what really happened? Maya laughed again, that same bitter sound. You're a billionaire, Mr. Cole. You profit from the same system that destroyed me. Why would you help? It was a fair question. Ethan didn't have a good answer. Not yet. But as he watched this woman who'd lost everything stand there with her head high, he realized something. His empire was built on an algorithm created by someone the industry had erased. And if he did nothing, he'd be complicit in that erasure. Because it's the right thing to do, Ethan said finally. Maya studied him for a long moment. The right thing, she repeated softly. I used to believe people like you cared about that. She turned to leave, but Ethan caught her arm gently. Give me 48 hours. Let me prove I'm different. Maya looked at his hand on her arm, then at his face. Something in his expression must have convinced her, because she nodded slowly. 48 hours. But if you betray me, Mr. Cole, I'll make sure quantum flow takes your entire company down with it. She walked out of the coffee shop, leaving Ethan standing there with the weight of an impossible decision crushing down on him. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He called his legal team, his security advisors, and every contact he had in tech industry regulation. He needed to understand what had really happened to Amara Voss. What he discovered made him sick. The company that had employed her, Nexus Global Solutions, had a history of intellectual property theft disguised as employment contracts. Amara wasn't their first victim. She was just the most vocal. And when she tried to expose them, they'd used their political connections to bury her under false charges of corporate espionage and system sabotage. The charges were dropped quietly a year later, but by then her reputation was destroyed. Ethan pulled up Nexus Global's current projects. They'd recently announced a major upgrade to logistics software, scheduled to launch in exactly 3 weeks. Right when Maya said Quantum Flow would start failing. The timing was too perfect. They weren't just waiting for the collapse. They were counting on it. And they'd probably already sold contracts to dozens of companies desperate for a solution to problems that didn't exist yet. It was brilliant. Evil but brilliant. And Ethan's company was going to be ground zero. He made a decision then. One that would either save his company or destroy it. He picked up his phone and called Maya. She answered on the first ring, voice wary. It's been 12 hours, not 48. Ethan ignored that. I need you to work with my tech team. Quietly. We're going to document everything about Quantum Flow, including the kill switch. And then we're going to go public. Silence on the other end. Then, you're insane. Going public will ruin your company. Ethan smiled grimly. Maybe. But it'll ruin Nexus Global too. And that's worth it. 3 days later, Maya sat in a secure room in Cole Logistics headquarters, surrounded by Ethan's most trusted engineers. She'd been hesitant at first, convinced this was a trap. But Ethan had given her something no one else had in 5 years. Belief. They worked around the clock, Maya explaining the intricacies of Quantum Flow while the engineers documented everything. She showed them the kill switch buried deep in the code, elegant and invisible. She explained how Nexus Global had altered her original design, making it more profitable but less ethical. And she proved beyond any doubt that she was the algorithm's true creator. On the 7th day, Ethan received a call from Nexus Global's CEO. I understand you've been digging into ancient history, the man said smoothly. I'd advise you to stop. Dr. Voss is mentally unstable, and any claims she's making are the delusions of a disgraced former employee. Ethan's jaw clenched. Is that why you're launching a new logistics platform in 2 weeks? Coincidentally timed with Quantum Flow's planned failure. The silence that followed was answer enough. Stay away from this, Cole. You're out of your depth. The line went dead. Ethan immediately called his lawyers. File everything with the Regulatory Commission. Tonight. Then he called Maya. They know we're on to them. We need to move faster. Maya's voice was calm despite the circumstances. Then let's give them something they can't ignore. What happened next would become legendary in tech industry circles. Ethan arranged for an emergency slot at the International Logistics Summit happening in San Francisco that week. It was the biggest gathering of supply chain executives in the world. Nexus Global CEO would be there, scheduled to announce their new platform. Ethan planned to announce something else entirely. The morning of the summit, Maya stood backstage in a borrowed suit, hands shaking. Ethan stood beside her, wearing his most confident smile for the cameras. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. Maya shook her head. Yes, I do. 5 years is long enough to hide. When Ethan took the stage, the auditorium held 3,000 people and countless cameras. Good morning, he began. I'm here to tell you about the greatest logistics innovation of the decade. Quantum Flow, the algorithm that powers my company and dozens of others, revolutionizing how we move goods around the world. He paused for effect. I'm also here to tell you that my company has been using stolen technology. The auditorium erupted. Cameras flashed. Executives whispered urgently to their assistants. Ethan let the chaos build before continuing. Quantum Flow was created by Dr. Amara Voss, a brilliant systems architect who was systematically destroyed by her employer when she tried to claim credit for her own work. He gestured off stage. Dr. Voss, would you join me? Maya walked out into the lights and the room went silent. Somewhere in the audience, Nexus Global CEO went pale. For the next 30 minutes, Maya explained everything. The original design. The theft. The kill switch. The planned collapse. She was articulate, precise, and utterly convincing. When she finished, Ethan made his final announcement. Effective immediately, I'm transferring full control of Quantum Flow's implementation in my company to Dr. Voss. She will receive all royalties, all patents, and full credit as the algorithm's creator. Furthermore, I'm opening my company's systems for complete independent audit to verify her claims. He looked directly at where Nexus Global's executives sat. I encourage all companies using Quantum Flow to do the same. Because in 2 weeks, if Dr. Voss is right, your systems will begin to fail. And the only person who can fix them is standing right here. The room exploded into chaos. Cameras swarmed the stage. Reporters shouted questions. Nexus Global CEO tried to leave, but federal regulators were already waiting in the lobby. The documentation Ethan's team had compiled was airtight. Within hours, the investigation was front-page news. Within days, Nexus Global's contracts were suspended pending investigation. Within 2 weeks, their entire executive team was facing criminal charges for corporate espionage and fraud. Maya Voss became a household name. Not as a victim but as the architect who'd been erased and fought her way back. Job offers flooded in from every major tech company. But Maya turned them all down. 3 months later, Ethan found her at the same coffee shop where she'd first told him the truth. She was drinking tea, looking more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. "You disappeared," Ethan said, sliding into the seat across from her. Maya smiled. "I got what I needed. Recognition. Justice. Money. Now I want something else." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" Maya's eyes were bright. "Freedom. I spent 5 years hiding and 2 months in the spotlight. Now I just want to live quietly. Do work I believe in. On my own terms." She paused. "What about you? I heard you stepped down as CEO." Ethan nodded. "My board thought my decision to expose quantum flow was reckless. They weren't wrong. We lost contracts. Stock dropped 20%. He smiled. "But I sleep better now." Maya laughed softly. The great Ethan Cole, learning humility from a waitress. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Ethan asked the question that had haunted him for months. "That night at the restaurant, why did you answer my question? You could have stayed invisible." Maya considered this. "Because you asked like you actually wanted to know. Most people ask questions they don't want answered. But you were genuinely curious. That's rare." Ethan found himself smiling. "I learned something from all this. Power isn't about control. It's about knowing when to listen." Maya raised her teacup in a mock toast. "Look at you, getting philosophical." But her expression turned serious. "There's something I never told you. About the kill switch." Ethan leaned forward. "What about it?" Maya's eyes held his. "It's still active. In every system running quantum flow. I can turn it off permanently, but I've chosen not to." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Why not?" Maya set down her cup carefully. "Because as long as it exists, companies know I'm watching. That someone's watching. It keeps them honest." Ethan processed this. "So you're saying," Maya nodded. "I'm saying the algorithm that runs global logistics is still controlled by a woman the industry tried to erase. And they know it now. They know I can collapse their systems anytime I want." She smiled and there was steel in it. "That's real power, Mr. Cole. Not the kind you buy. The kind you build." Ethan stared at her, understanding flooding through him. Maya Voss hadn't just reclaimed her life. She'd positioned herself as the industry's conscience. An invisible hand that could reward ethics or punish greed with a few lines of code. "That's terrifying," Ethan said finally. Maya's smile widened. "Good. It should be. For too long, people like Nexus Global operated without consequences. Now they have one." She stood, leaving money for her tea on the table. "Where will you go?" Ethan asked. Maya looked out at the San Francisco streets, at the city that had witnessed her destruction and her resurrection. "I haven't decided yet. Maybe I'll disappear again. Maybe I'll start a new company. Maybe I'll just travel and see what happens." She looked back at him. "The point is, it's my choice now. No one else's." Ethan stood too. "If you ever need anything," Maya cut him off gently. "I know. You've proven you're one of the good ones, Ethan Cole. Don't let that change." She turned to walk away, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing. In 6 months, 3 major logistics companies will face the same choice you did. The algorithm will detect unethical patterns in their operations. When it does, they'll have to decide whether to change or collapse." Her eyes glinted. "I'll be watching to see what they choose." With that, she walked out of the coffee shop and into the crowded street, disappearing into the flow of people like she'd never been there at all. Ethan stood alone, watching the space where she'd been. His phone buzzed with messages from his former executives, his lawyers, his board members. All demanding meetings, updates, explanations. But for the first time in his life, Ethan Cole didn't care about any of it. He thought about Maya's final words. 3 companies, 6 months. The same choice he'd faced. And suddenly he understood. This wasn't over. Maya Voss had set something in motion that went far beyond one stolen algorithm or one corrupt company. She'd created a system of accountability that would reshape the entire industry. And she'd done it by becoming exactly what they'd feared most. Invisible, powerful, and completely beyond their control. As Ethan walked out of the coffee shop into the San Francisco afternoon, he pulled out his phone and made a call. Jennifer? It's Ethan. I know I'm not CEO anymore, but I need you to run a diagnostic on quantum flow. Full ethical audit. Every system we operate. He paused, then added, because I have a feeling we're about to find out if we pass Dr. Voss's test. And I'd rather fix our problems now than have them exposed later. He hung up and smiled grimly. Maya had taught him something crucial. In a world of power and money, the people you underestimate are the ones who change everything. And the waitress who'd served his water that night had just rewritten the rules of the game. Ethan wondered how many other invisible people were out there waiting for their moment. How many brilliant minds had been silenced, erased, or overlooked. And what would happen when they all decided, like Maya, that they'd been quiet long enough. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, for the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt something unexpected. Hope. 6 months later, the first company failed Maya's test. Their stock collapsed overnight as quantum flow introduced cascading errors into their operations. The CEO resigned in disgrace, and investigators uncovered labor violations that had been hidden for years. The second company passed, implementing sweeping ethical reforms before the algorithm could punish them. The third company tried to fight, hiring hackers to disable the kill switch. They failed. Maya's code was too elegant, too deeply embedded. That company didn't just fail. It ceased to exist. And throughout it all, Maya Voss remained a ghost. Some said she was in Thailand running a small tech consultancy. Others claimed she'd gone into academia, teaching the next generation of engineers. A few conspiracy theorists insisted she was working for the government, designing algorithms for national security. The truth was simpler and more complex. Maya was everywhere and nowhere, watching the systems she'd created reshape the industry she'd once been exiled from. And when companies called on her for help, she answered. Sometimes. But she always left the final decision to them. Change or collapse. Ethics or profit. The choice that defined everything. As for Ethan Cole, he started a new company. Not a logistics empire, but a consulting firm that helped corporations implement ethical AI systems. He was no longer a billionaire, but he was no longer hollow either. And sometimes late at night he'd receive an encrypted email with no sender. Just a single line, "Good choice." He never replied. He didn't need to. Because somewhere out there, a woman who'd been erased was making sure the powerful remembered one crucial lesson. The people you overlook today might be the ones controlling your future tomorrow. And that future, Maya had decided, would be built on something stronger than power or money. It would be built on accountability. One algorithm, one company, one choice at a time. The system Maya created didn't just punish corruption. It rewarded growth. Companies that treated workers fairly, that prioritized sustainability, that operated with transparency found their logistics running smoother than ever. Quantum flow optimized their routes, predicted their needs, made them more profitable than they dreamed possible. It was carrot and stick, coded into the very infrastructure of global commerce. And the beautiful irony wasn't lost on anyone. The algorithm they'd all stolen was now teaching them how to be better. Maya Voss had turned her greatest pain into the industry's greatest teacher. She'd transformed from victim to architect of a new kind of power. Not power over people, but power through principle. And as the months turned into years, as more companies passed her tests and a few more failed them, the logistics industry slowly, reluctantly began to change. But Maya knew it wasn't enough. Not yet. Because while corporations were learning accountability, the people who'd destroyed her walked free. Nexus Global's executives had been charged, but their lawyers were good. Trials dragged on. Settlements were negotiated. Justice moved at the speed of money, which meant barely at all. Maya thought about this often, sitting in her small apartment in Prague or her temporary office in Singapore, or wherever she happened to be that month. She'd won the public battle. But the private war continued. And she was planning her next move. Late one evening, Ethan's phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. When he answered, Maya's voice came through clear and calm. I need your help with something. Something dangerous. Ethan didn't hesitate. What do you need? Maya's pause felt heavy. I've been tracking financial records. The people who destroyed me didn't just steal my work. They stole from hundreds of others. Researchers, engineers, designers. An entire network of intellectual property theft spanning 20 years. And I found proof. Ethan's pulse quickened. What kind of proof? Maya's voice hardened. The kind that could bring down not just Nexus Global but a dozen other companies. The kind that could expose corruption at levels we haven't even touched yet. She paused again, and Ethan could hear the weight of the decision in her silence. But if I release it, there will be consequences. People will lose jobs. Economies could destabilize. The chaos could be worse than the corruption. Ethan understood immediately. So you're asking me whether you should pull the trigger? Maya laughed softly. I'm asking you what you think power is really for. Because I have enough now to reshape an entire industry. But should I? It was the same question she'd asked herself every day for 6 months. The same question that kept her awake at night. I can't answer that for you, Ethan said carefully. But I can tell you what I learned from you. Power isn't about what you can do. It's about what you choose not to do. Maya absorbed this. That's surprisingly wise for a former billionaire. Ethan smiled. I had a good teacher. Another pause. Then Maya said something that made Ethan's blood run cold. There's one more thing. The kill switch I built into quantum flow? It's not the only one. I embedded failsafes in every major algorithm I've touched for the past 5 years. Transportation systems, financial platforms, communication networks. All of them have a version of the same code. Ethan's mind raced. You're saying you could, Maya finished his thought. I could collapse significant portions of global infrastructure. Not forever, but long enough to prove a point. The magnitude of what she was telling him hit like a physical blow. Maya, she cut him off. Terrifying? I know. That's why I'm telling you. Because I need someone to hold me accountable too. I need someone to remind me that power without restraint is just tyranny with better code. Her voice softened. I didn't survive what I survived just to become the thing that destroyed me. Ethan felt the weight of the moment. So what are you going to do? Maya's answer came after a long silence. I haven't decided yet. But when I do, the world will change. One way or another. The line went dead. Ethan sat in his office, phone still pressed to his ear, staring at nothing. Maya Voss held more power than any government, any corporation, any individual he'd ever known. And she was asking the same question every person with power eventually faces. What do you do when you can do anything? He thought about the waitress who'd answered his arrogant question all those months ago. The woman who'd been erased and fought her way back. The architect who'd turned her pain into purpose. And he realized something fundamental. Maya's greatest power wasn't the algorithms she'd created. It was her restraint. Her ability to hold back when unleashing would be easier. To choose accountability over revenge. That was what made her different. 3 days later, Maya made her decision. She released half the documentation. Enough to expose the most egregious crimes, to bring justice to the most damaged victims, to force systemic change. But not enough to collapse everything. She held back the evidence that could destroy entire economies, choosing surgical precision over nuclear option. The fallout was immediate and massive. 17 executives were indicted. 4 companies filed for bankruptcy protection. 3 governments launched investigations into corporate corruption. And through it all, Maya Voss remained carefully visible. Not hidden, not hunted. Just present. A reminder that somewhere someone was still watching. When Ethan finally saw her again 6 months after that phone call, they met at the same rooftop restaurant where this had all begun. The place where he'd asked a waitress for advice and accidentally changed both their lives. Maya looked different now. Confident. Settled. Free. You held back, Ethan said as they sat down. Maya nodded. I held back. Because destroying everything wouldn't fix anything. Real change takes time. Patience. The willingness to let people learn instead of just punishing them for not knowing. She smiled. You taught me that, actually. Ethan raised an eyebrow. I taught you. Maya laughed. When you chose to expose your company instead of protecting it. That took courage. And it showed me that people can change if given the chance. They ordered dinner, both aware of the irony of the setting. When the food arrived, delivered by a young server who barely glanced at them, Maya said something that would stay with Ethan forever. You know what the real power is? Not the ability to destroy. It's the ability to build. To create systems that last beyond you. To make choices that help people you'll never meet. She looked out at the city sparkling below. I spent 5 years thinking I'd lost everything. But what I really lost was the arrogance of believing my intelligence made me invincible. The truth is we're all vulnerable. All dependent on systems we don't control. And the only way to survive is to make those systems fair. Ethan considered this. So what's next for Dr. Amara Voss? Maya's smile was mysterious. I'm working on something new. An algorithm that detects inequality in hiring practices. Another that identifies wage discrimination. I'm building tools that give power to people who've never had it. She paused. And I'm training others to do the same. Teaching them to embed ethics into code from the beginning. So maybe the next generation won't have to fight the battles I fought. It was ambitious. Revolutionary. Exactly what Ethan expected from her.